The lawyer is sweating. Actually sweating. Pit stains spreading under his $900 suit, while Clara Adler, 72, widow, wearing a striped shirt she bought at Target, sits across the conference table holding a piece of paper. Just one. It's slightly crumpled, like she pulled it from her purse, where it was probably stuffed next to grocery coupons and breath mints. She's laughing, not a polite chuckle, a full-throated, shoulder-shaking bark that makes the stenographer's fingers pause over the keys. The kind of laugh you hear at a funeral when someone tells the one story the deceased would have hated you sharing. "You want to know what's funny?" Clara says, and her voice has this edge now, this wire-tight clarity that wasn't there 10 minutes ago when she was fumbling with her reading glasses and asking the lawyer to repeat the question. "My husband stole $1.2 million from your bank, 240 separate times, and not one person noticed." The lead counsel's jaw tightens. He glances at his associate, who's suddenly very interested in his legal pad. "But someone did notice, didn't they?" Clara smooths the paper flat. 5 years ago. Wait, stop. How did we get here? 3 weeks earlier, Clara's house smelled like funeral casseroles and other people's perfume. Her sister kept refilling the coffee urn. The pastor had just left. Martin's ashes sat on the mantel in a bronze urn she'd picked from a catalog while high on Xanax and grief. Then the doorbell rang. Clara thought it was another neighbor with sympathy lasagna. She opened the door, still holding a wadded Kleenex, mascara probably smeared down to her chin. The man wasn't holding lasagna. "Clara Adler?" He shoved an envelope at her chest. Thick. Official. The return address said Apex Capital Legal Division. Her sister materialized at her elbow. "What the hell?" Clara tore it open right there on the porch, guests watching through the screen door like she was dinner theater. "Notice of foreclosure. Proceedings." Her hands started shaking. Not the paper, her actual hands, the bones inside them rattling. The notice claimed Martin had taken out 240 loans. Business loans. For something called Martin Cook Consulting. She'd been married to him for 47 years. She'd never heard that name before. That name, Martin Cook Consulting, sat in her mouth like a piece of gristle she couldn't swallow. Clara stood on the porch long after the process server disappeared down the driveway, his tail lights shrinking into red pinpricks. The envelope hung from her fingers. Inside, her sister was saying something about lawyers, about calling someone, but the words arrived muffled, like Clara's head was underwater. 47 years. She knew Martin's coffee order. Black, 2 sugars, but only the raw kind because processed sugar tasted like chemicals. She knew he couldn't sleep without the bathroom fan running. She knew the scar on his left knee was from a bicycle accident when he was 9, and that he cried exactly once during their marriage, when their dog died in 2003. But Martin Cook Consulting, the guests started filtering out after that. No one knew what to say. They'd come prepared with platitudes about God's plan, and he's in a better place now, not whatever this was. Clara's sister tried to stay, kept insisting she'd sleep on the couch, but Clara kicked her out too. Gently. With the kind of firm squeeze on the elbow that meant, "I need to be alone, or I'm going to scream." By midnight, the house was finally empty. Clara sat at the kitchen table with the foreclosure notice spread out like a dissection. The paperwork had that specific weight of bad news, thick cardstock, official seals, words like defendant and default judgment that seemed designed to make you feel small. According to this, Martin had borrowed money starting in 2018. Small amounts, never more than $5,000 at a time, but 240 times. She did the math on the back of a sympathy card. $1.2 million. Her brain kept snagging on the logistics. When? How? She'd balanced their checkbook every month for decades, not because she enjoyed it, but because Martin always forgot, and then they'd get hit with overdraft fees. There was no extra $1 million. Their joint account had $14,000 in it. Their savings had maybe $30,000. The life insurance policy would pay out $150,000, but that hadn't even processed yet. So where the hell was the money? Clara walked to Martin's office. She'd been avoiding it since the funeral, couldn't stand the smell of his aftershave still clinging to the air. The room was exactly as he'd left it. Desk spotless, papers in neat stacks, his reading glasses folded on top of a crossword puzzle he'd never finish. Martin was one of those people who treated mess like a moral failing. Even his pens were organized by color. She started opening drawers. Bank statements, all normal. Utility bills. A file labeled Tax Returns 2020-2024 that she'd never looked at because taxes made her want to claw her eyes out. Nothing unusual, nothing that screamed secret criminal empire. Then she checked under the desk. Her knees cracked when she knelt down. 72-year-old knees, the kind that announced every weather change. She ran her hand along the underside of the wood, feeling for... What? She didn't even know. A hidden compartment? A treasure map? This was stupid. Martin wasn't James Bond. Her fingers hit something taped to the wood. A phone. Not their phone. A cheap flip phone. The kind drug dealers used in TV shows. It was still charged. She pressed the power button and the screen glowed green, ancient and pixelated. One contact saved, tech support. No call history, no texts, just that single name sitting there like a punchline to a joke she didn't understand. Clara sat back on her heels, phone in hand, and felt something crack open inside her chest. Not grief this time, rage, the hot, clarifying kind that burns away confusion and leaves only one question. What the fuck did you do, Martin? She thought about calling the number. Her thumb hovered over the green button, but something stopped her. Some instinct that said once she pressed it, there was no going back. Right now, she could still pretend this was a clerical error, a mix-up, someone else's mess stuck to her name by accident. She thought about the loans, 240 of them. That wasn't impulse, that was systematic, methodical, that was Martin. Clara stood up, joints protesting, and looked around the office with new eyes. The spotless desk wasn't organized, it was staged. The neat stacks weren't efficiency, they were camouflage. Her husband had been running something, and he'd been careful enough that she, living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, never noticed. Clara put the phone in her pocket, then she started really searching. The searching took 4 hours. Clara tore through that office like a woman possessed, pulling books off shelves, checking behind picture frames, running her hands along the backs of drawers for false bottoms. She found nothing. Tax forms that looked normal, receipts for hardware store purchases, a collection of Martin's crossword puzzles, half finished, his handwriting slanting across the grids in blue ink. By 3 a.m., she was sitting in the middle of the floor, surrounded by paper carnage, her lower back screaming when she noticed the filing cabinet. Not noticed, really looked at it. Martin had bought it maybe 10 years ago, one of those heavy metal ones that required 2 delivery guys and a dolly. He'd been weirdly specific about wanting it in gunmetal gray, not black. At the time, Clara thought it was just Martin being Martin, particular about things that didn't matter. The bottom drawer stuck when she pulled it. She yanked harder, still stuck. But there was a gap, maybe half an inch of space between the drawer and the frame, like something was jamming the mechanism from inside. Clara grabbed a butter knife from the kitchen and wedged it into the gap, prying like she was breaking into her own house. The metal screamed. Something inside gave way with a crack that sounded expensive. The drawer rolled open. Inside files. Boring, normal files with labels like insurance policies and mortgage documents. She pulled them out, stacked them on the floor, kept going until the drawer was empty and she could see the bottom. Except it wasn't the bottom. There was a second layer, a false bottom made of thin plywood that had been cut to fit perfectly. One corner had a small notch, just big enough for a fingernail. Clara's heart was doing something arrhythmic now, a jazz drummer pattern that made her temples pulse. She hooked her finger into the notch and lifted. Underneath, a laptop. Not Martin's regular laptop. That one was sitting on his desk, password protected but boring, filled with solitaire games and spreadsheets for their household budget. This was a newer model, sleek and black, with a strip of blue painter's tape across the top that said, "Tuesday only" in Martin's handwriting. Tuesday only. What the hell did that mean? Clara opened it. The screen glowed to life, no password required, and her stomach dropped. The desktop was covered in folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a date and a dollar amount. 03/15/2018, $4,800. 7/22/2018, $4,950. 11/05/2018, $5,000. She clicked on the first one. Inside were PDFs, loan applications, all filed with Apex Capital, all approved. Each one showed Martin's name, their home address, and a business description for Martin Cook Consulting IT Services. The approval stamps were digital, automated, no human signature anywhere. Clara's hands were shaking again. She clicked through folder after folder, watching the amounts pile up. $4,800, $5,000, $4,750, always under $5,000, always on a Tuesday. Then she found the script. It was a text file, just lines of code she didn't understand, but the comment at the top was in plain English. Auto-submit when system update detected. Target, small business loans under 5K threshold. Tuesday maintenance window ajar blind spot. Her husband, her Martin, who could barely work the TV remote, had written a program to exploit the bank's computer system. No, wait, that wasn't right either. Clara scrolled through the file history. The script had been modified dozens of times, but the original creation date was 2017, and the original author wasn't Martin. The metadata showed a username, Cookie Monster 47. That was Martin's gaming handle. He played World of Warcraft on Thursday nights with a group of retired guys he'd never met in person. She used to tease him about it, about being a 70-year-old man yelling at teenagers through a headset. But this script, someone had sent it to him. There was an email embedded in the file notes. Try this. Worked for me in '09 before they patched it. Banks never learn. D, just D. No last name. No email address she could trace. Clara sat back, the laptop screen casting her face in cold blue light. Martin hadn't built this. He'd been handed the blueprint. Some stranger on the internet had given him the keys to rob a bank. And Martin, careful, methodical, crossword puzzle Martin, had said yes. And he'd done it 240 times. She thought about the burner phone in her pocket. Tech support. Maybe that was D. Maybe that was the person who'd started all this, who'd turned her husband into a thief. Or maybe Martin had always been capable of this, and she'd just been too busy not looking to notice. Looking had never been Clara's strong suit. She'd spent 47 years perfecting the art of not asking questions. When Martin came home with a new fishing rod they couldn't afford, she didn't ask. When he started paying for groceries in cash instead of using their debit card, she told herself it was because he liked having exact change. The locked drawer in his office? Privacy. Everyone deserved privacy. Now she was standing in the Apex Capital branch on Riverside Drive at 9 a.m. sharp, sleep-deprived and furious, clutching a manila folder full of printed loan applications like they were evidence in a murder trial. The branch was designed to look friendly, warm lighting, fake plants that were just realistic enough to make you doubt yourself, a coffee station with those little wooden stirrers that snapped if you breathed on them wrong. A young woman at the front desk smiled the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I need to see the loan documents for my husband," Clara said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Martin Adler? He passed away 3 weeks ago, and apparently he took out loans I didn't know about." The smile flickered. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me get a manager." 15 minutes later, Clara was sitting across from a man named Derek Chen, whose desk had a nameplate that said Assistant Vice President and a framed photo of himself running a 5K. He had that particular brand of corporate sympathy, professionally concerned, personally disconnected. "Mrs. Adler, I understand this must be difficult." "The loans," Clara interrupted. "I want to see the original documents." Derek typed something into his computer, frowning. "It looks like these were all approved through our automated system. Small business loans under $5,000 don't require manual review. It's company policy." 240 times? His frown deepened. More typing. "That does seem unusual." "Unusual?" Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. "My husband stole over $1 million from you, and nobody noticed because you didn't want to pay someone to check." "Mrs. Adler, I assure you our security measures—" "When do you update your system?" Derek blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Your computer system. When do you update it?" Clara pulled out one of the printed applications, pointed to the date. "This was approved on a Tuesday, so was this one and this one. All Tuesdays." Something shifted in Derek's face. Recognition, maybe. Or worry. He turned back to his computer, clicking through screens she couldn't see. "Tuesday mornings," he said slowly. "We have scheduled maintenance every Tuesday from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. The system runs on backup protocols during that window to process overnight applications. And during that window, it auto-approves everything." "No, it—" He stopped, typed faster. His jaw tightened. "It shouldn't. There are supposed to be thresholds, verification steps." Clara watched him realize what Martin had figured out years ago, that banks were just machines, and machines had patterns, and if you learned the pattern, you could walk right through the fence. Derek's phone rang. He ignored it, kept scrolling through whatever he was seeing on his screen, his face going progressively paler. "How many?" Clara asked. I'm not authorized to—" "How many other people did this?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw it. Fear. Not fear of her, but fear of what she represented. Proof that the system was broken. Proof that someone upstairs had screwed up, and now this assistant vice president with his 5K photo was going to be the one holding the bag. "I need to make some calls," Derek said. Clara didn't move. "I'm not leaving until I get copies of every document." "Mrs. Adler, you're trying to take my house because of money my husband stole. Fine, but I want to see exactly how he did it, and I want to know why nobody stopped him." Derek's phone rang again. This time he answered it, his voice dropping to a whisper. Clara caught fragments, aware of the situation. "Potential liability. Need legal to review." When he hung up, his professional sympathy was gone. What replaced it was something harder, more careful. "Someone will be in touch with you regarding the foreclosure proceedings," he said, "but I can't release those documents without corporate approval." "Then get approval." "It could take weeks." Clara stood up, her knees protesting but holding. "I've got time. My husband made sure of that. He's dead, so he can't testify, which means I'm the only person who can tell you what he did. She leaned across the desk, close enough to smell Derek's coffee breath. And right now, I'm the only person who wants to. She walked out before he could respond, the automatic doors hissing shut behind her. Her phone buzzed in her purse, unknown number. Clara stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Mrs. Adler? A woman's voice, professional and cold. This is Apex Capital Legal Division. We need to schedule a deposition. The deposition was scheduled for 3 weeks out, which gave Clara exactly 21 days to figure out what the hell Martin had actually done. She started by calling her niece. Jenna was 34, worked for some tech company in Seattle doing something with data architecture that Clara didn't understand, and had once helped Clara recover photos from a corrupted memory card. Close enough to forensic accounting, right? Wrong, apparently. Aunt Clara, I design databases. I don't investigate financial crimes. Jenna's voice crackled through the phone, skeptical but softening. But, okay, send me what you have. Clara overnight shipped Martin's hidden laptop, still in its box, still with that blue painter's tape screaming Tuesday only across the lid. Then she waited, which felt like swallowing glass. 2 days later, Jenna showed up at her door with the laptop, a rolling suitcase, and dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept much either. You can't tell anyone about this, Jenna said, pushing past Clara into the kitchen. She dumped the laptop on the table like it was radioactive. I mean it. What I found, if the bank knew I'd accessed their system architecture, even accidentally. You hacked them? I didn't hack anything. Martin did. Jenna opened the laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Your husband wasn't running a script. He was running a monitoring program. Look. The screen filled with code. Clara squinted at it, useless, but Jenna kept talking. Apex Capital updates their loan processing system every Tuesday morning. Standard maintenance. They have to. Banks run on ancient infrastructure held together with duct tape and prayer. But here's the thing. When they update, they don't actually shut down the system. They run it in legacy mode for 2 hours while the new version patches in. English, please. Jenna pulled up a diagram she'd apparently drawn herself, all boxes and arrows. Imagine 2 security guards. One's going on break, the other's arriving for shift change. There's a 60-second window where the door is unguarded. Martin figured out how to detect that window. Clara sat down hard. How? He pinged the bank's server every Monday night. When it responded with a specific error code, a 404 error, which means page not found, he knew the system was in legacy mode. That's when he submitted the loan applications. The old system didn't have the same fraud detection as the new one. It just approved everything under $5,000. For 6 years? For 6 years! Jenna closed the laptop. Aunt Clara, do you understand what this means? The bank's security was so bad that a 70-year-old man with basic coding skills could rob them blind. And he wasn't even the first. Clara's throat went dry. What? Jenna pulled out a printout, covered in highlighted sections. I found forum posts, dark web stuff, but archived on regular internet sites too. Someone with the username dtrain posted instructions for this exact exploit back in 2009. Martin's script is almost identical. He copied it. There it was again. D. The person who'd sent Martin the blueprint. Did you find who dtrain is? No. The posts were deleted years ago. But here's the thing. Jenna tapped the paper. At least 40 other people commented on those posts. 40 people who saw the instructions. And based on the bank's public financial disclosures, Their unexpected loan losses from 2009 to 2024 total about $35 million. The number sat between them like a bomb. Martin wasn't special, Clara said slowly. He was just one of dozens, maybe hundreds. I can't tell how many people actually used the exploit versus just talked about it. But yeah, your husband found a broken fence and walked through it. So did a lot of other people. Jenna leaned back, rubbing her eyes. The bank had to know. They had to see the pattern. All these small loans, all approved on Tuesdays, all defaulting eventually. You don't lose $35 million without noticing. Clara thought about Derek Chen, his face going pale as he scrolled through his computer. The way he'd shut down when she asked questions. The way he'd called someone immediately, his voice dropping to a whisper. They knew. Of course they knew. Why didn't they fix it? Clara asked. Because fixing it means admitting it was broken. Admitting it was broken means admitting they've been lying to shareholders for 15 years about their security. Admitting that means their stock crashes. Jenna nodded. So instead, they're coming after you. One widow, one house, clean up the mess, bury the evidence, move on. Clara stood up, her hands flat on the table. Her wedding ring caught the light. 47 years of gold, tarnished now around the edges. They're going to take my house because my husband exposed their incompetence. Yes, and if I fight back, they'll bury me in legal fees until I give up. Probably. Clara smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile that happens when you realize you've been playing the wrong game the entire time. Unless I can prove they knew, she said. Unless I can prove they saw the fraud and did nothing? Jenna's eyes widened. Aunt Clara? Martin left me a burner phone. One contact. Tech support. I think I need to make a call. The burner phone sat on Clara's kitchen table for 2 days before she touched it again. Jenna had gone back to Seattle with explicit instructions to stay out of this, which they both knew was a lie. Clara could feel the weight of that single contact tech support like it was something physical, something with mass and gravity. Calling it felt like opening a door she couldn't close. On the 3rd day, she picked it up, dialed. The phone rang 4 times before someone answered. No greeting, just breathing and the distant sound of traffic. Martin's dead, Clara said. Silence, then, I know. A man's voice, older, rough around the edges. Saw the obituary. Are you D? A pause. Was. Long time ago. You sent him the script. I sent a lot of people a lot of things. Doesn't mean they use them. The voice shifted, defensive now. Your husband made his own choices. Clara's grip tightened on the phone. The bank is trying to take my house. They say I'm liable for what he did. You're not. Legally, you're not. The loans were in his name for a business entity. They're trying to scare you. Well, it's working. Another pause. Traffic sounds swelled and faded. There's a settlement offer coming. Take it, walk away. You fight this, they'll crush you. I don't want to walk away. Then you're stupid. The line went dead. Clara sat there holding the phone, her pulse hammering in her ears. She wanted to throw it across the room, watch it shatter against the wall. Instead, she set it down gently, carefully, like it might explode. The settlement offer arrived the next morning. FedEx, signature required. Delivered by a woman who looked bored and made Clara sign 3 times. Inside, a thick packet of legal documents that used the word whereas 17 times in the first paragraph alone. The terms were simple. Clara would surrender the house. In exchange, Apex Capital would forgive the debt and agree not to pursue criminal charges against Martin's estate. Clean break. Everyone walks away. She read it twice, sitting at the kitchen table with her reading glasses on, underlining sections she didn't understand. The house was worth maybe $400,000. The debt was $1.2 million. Mathematically, the bank was being generous. Clara almost signed it. Her pen was literally touching the signature line when she noticed the wording. And defendant agrees to maintain confidentiality regarding all loan transactions and related communications in perpetuity. They wanted her silent. Not just settling the debt, buying her silence, which meant there was something worth staying silent about. Clara put the pen down. She thought about Martin's office, the hidden laptop, the burner phone, the meticulous files organized by date and amount. Martin had been careful, obsessively careful. He'd hidden the evidence of what he was doing, but he'd also kept records. Why keep records of a crime unless he needed insurance? Claire went back to the office, pulled books off shelves again, checked behind picture frames, felt along the undersides of drawers. Nothing. Just the same ordinary detritus of an ordinary life that wasn't ordinary at all. Then she saw the bookshelf, Martin's classics collection, leather-bound editions he'd bought at an estate sale years ago and never read. She dusted them 1,000 times, never once opened one. Clara pulled down the Count of Monte Cristo. Heavy. Too heavy. She opened it. The center had been hollowed out, pages carved away to create a cavity. Inside, a manila envelope, unsealed, with a single sheet of paper folded inside. Clara's hands shook as she unfolded it. An email chain, printed, dated February 2019. From derek.chenopexcapital.com to regional.vp@apexcapital.com, subject flagged loan pattern, Martin Adler. Our fraud detection system has identified an unusual pattern of small business loans, $4,800 or $5,000, submitted by the same individual, Martin Adler, account the rate 47392, on consecutive Tuesdays. 47 loans approved in 18 months. Recommend manual review and potential account freeze. The reply 3 days later from regional.vp@apexcapital.com to derek.chenopexcapital.com. Flagged loan pattern, Martin Adler. Loans are performing, no missed payments. Categorize as high-yield small business portfolio for Q1 reporting. Do not freeze. These accounts are boosting our approval metrics for the quarterly review. Will address if delinquency occurs. Clara read it 3 times, then a 4th. They knew. In 2019, they knew. And they'd let it continue because Martin's fraud was making their numbers look good. Better approval rates, higher loan volume, bonuses for hitting quarterly targets. They'd let Martin steal for 5 more years because stopping him would have hurt their profit margins. Clara folded the paper carefully, put it back in the book, carried the book to her bedroom. She hid it in her underwear drawer, beneath 47 years of accumulated bras and slips. Then she went downstairs and called the number on the settlement offer. "I'll take the deposition," she said when the lawyer answered. "Schedule it." The lawyer on the phone sounded surprised that Clara wanted to move forward, which told her everything she needed to know about how these things usually went. Most widows folded. Most people, when faced with a bank's legal team and a stack of documents thicker than a phone book, decided that keeping their dignity wasn't worth losing everything else. Clara had been that person 3 weeks ago, the woman who let Martin handle the stressful stuff because it was easier to just not know. That woman was dead now, buried right alongside Martin. She spent the next week preparing, not with lawyers. She couldn't afford lawyers. Not real ones, anyway. The free consultation she'd gotten from legal aid had been depressing. A tired woman in a strip mall office who'd basically said, "You're screwed," in 17 different euphemistic ways. Instead, Clara prepared by learning everything she could about Derek Chen. It wasn't hard. People put their whole lives online now. Derek had a LinkedIn profile listing his career at Apex Capital. Started as a loan officer in 2015, promoted to assistant vice president in 2018, currently overseeing the Riverside branch. His Facebook was private, but his wife's wasn't. Photos of their kids, their house in the suburbs, their annual vacation to somewhere tropical with clear water and palm trees. And his bonus structure, helpfully detailed in Apex Capital's public SEC filings, because banks had to disclose executive compensation. Derek Chen made $85,000 a year base salary. His bonus could go up to 40% if he hit quarterly targets for loan approvals and portfolio performance. In 2019, the year he'd sent that email, his bonus had been $31,000. Clara did the math. Martin's 47 loans that year totaled $235,000. All performing, no missed payments, categorized as high-yield small business. Derek's portfolio had looked pristine. His approval rating had been stellar, and he'd taken home an extra $31,000 because of it. She printed out the SEC filing, added it to her folder. The night before the deposition, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the hollowed-out book in her underwear drawer. The email was her nuclear option. Use it, and she'd blow up Derek's career, maybe the whole regional office. The bank would have to admit they'd knowingly allowed fraud to continue. Their stock would tank. Lawsuits would follow, but if she used it too early, they'd bury it, claim the email was fabricated, that she'd doctored it somehow. She needed them on record first, lying, saying their systems were perfect and their oversight was flawless. Then she'd prove they weren't. Clara got out of bed at 4 a.m., made coffee she didn't drink, and watched the sky turn from black to gray to the pale blue of dawn. She thought about Martin sitting at his desk every Tuesday, waiting for that 404 error, watching the bank system fail in real time. Had he felt guilty? Scared? Or had it been like a game, a puzzle to solve? Something to fill the hours of retirement that stretched too empty and too long? She'd never know. That was the part that hurt most. Not the betrayal. She was past that now. But the not knowing. 47 years of marriage, and she'd never understood what moved inside his head, what made him wake up one day and decide to become a thief. At 8 a.m., Clara got dressed. She picked the striped shirt deliberately, the red and white one from the Target clearance rack. It made her look domestic, harmless, like someone's grandmother who baked cookies and forgot people's names. She put on minimal makeup, left her hair unstyled. She wanted them to underestimate her. The deposition was being held at Apex Capital's legal offices downtown, a glass tower that reflected the sky and made you feel small just looking at it. Clara took the bus because parking was $25 and she was damned if she'd pay these people another cent. Security made her empty her purse. She'd expected that, had left the email at home. They gave her a visitor badge and directed her to the 14th floor. The conference room had windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20, and 4 lawyers waiting for her. 3 men in suits that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage payment, and 1 woman with a leather portfolio and the kind of severe haircut that said she didn't have time for your nonsense. Derek Chen sat at the far end of the table, not making eye contact. Clara set her purse down, sat, folded her hands. "Before we begin," the lead lawyer said, "I want to remind you that everything discussed here is under oath and being recorded." "I understand," Clara said. "Good." He smiled, the kind of smile sharks probably practiced. "Let's talk about your husband's crimes." The word crimes hung in the air like smoke. Clara let it sit there, didn't flinch, didn't react, just looked at the lawyer with the kind of blank, patient expression she'd perfected over decades of listening to Martin explain things she already understood. Mrs. Adler, the lawyer continued, your husband fraudulently obtained 240 loans totaling $1.2 million from Apex Capital over a 6-year period. Are you aware of how he accomplished this? No, Clara said, true enough. She knew the mechanics now, but she hadn't been aware during the actual fraud. Did you ever see unusual amounts of money in your joint accounts? No. Did your husband discuss his business, Martin Cook Consulting, with you? I didn't know it existed until the foreclosure notice. The lawyer made a note. The woman with the severe haircut was watching Clara like she was a specimen under glass. Derek Chen was still avoiding eye contact, studying his coffee cup like it contained the secrets of the universe. Mrs. Adler, we've reviewed your financial records. You were the primary account holder on all household expenses. You balanced the checkbook monthly. Are you really claiming you had no knowledge of 240 separate loan deposits? Here was the trap. Admit she was complicit or admit she was incompetent. Either way, they win. The money never came to our joint account, Clara said. I don't know where it went. You expect us to believe your husband stole over $1 million and you never saw a dime? I expect you to prove otherwise. Clara's voice stayed level. If you have evidence I benefited from this, show me. The lawyer's smile tightened. We're not here to prove anything, Mrs. Adler. We're here to establish the facts before we proceed with foreclosure and potential criminal charges against your husband's estate. Martin's dead. You can't charge a dead man. No, but we can pursue assets. The house, his life insurance, his pension. Everything acquired during the period of fraud is potentially subject to forfeiture. There it was. Not just the house. Everything. Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach, but she kept her face blank. Then I guess you'll need to prove the fraud actually happened the way you say it did. The second lawyer, younger, jumped in. Mrs. Adler, we have 240 loan documents with your husband's signature. We have bank records showing the money was disbursed. What more proof do you need? Proof that your system worked properly, Clara said. Proof that someone at this bank actually reviewed those applications instead of just rubber stamping them. The room went quiet. Derek Chen's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. Our loan approval process is fully automated for efficiency, the lead lawyer said carefully, but it has multiple security checkpoints. Does it? Clara leaned forward slightly, just enough to look engaged, confused, harmless. Because I've been trying to understand how this happened. My husband wasn't a criminal mastermind. He played World of Warcraft and did crossword puzzles. How did he trick your security systems 240 times? He exploited a weakness in our legacy system during maintenance windows, the woman with the severe haircut said. Her voice was clipped, annoyed. A vulnerability that has since been patched. When was it patched? That's proprietary information. Was it before or after my husband died? Clara pressed. Because if you knew about the vulnerability and didn't fix it, doesn't that make you partly responsible for the losses? The lawyers exchanged glances. Derek Chen was staring at the table now, his jaw clenched tight. Mrs. Adler, the lead lawyer said, your husband's actions were criminal regardless of any system vulnerabilities. You can't blame the bank for being robbed. I'm not blaming anyone, Clara said. I'm just trying to understand. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your security was so bad that a 70-year-old retiree could steal over $1 million, and now you want to punish me for not stopping him. She let her voice crack just slightly. I didn't even know it was happening. Perfect. She sounded defeated, overwhelmed, exactly what they wanted to see. The woman with the severe haircut made a note. Mrs. Adler, we're prepared to offer you a revised settlement. You surrender the house and any remaining assets from your husband's estate. In exchange, we won't pursue criminal forfeiture of your personal pension or Social Security. That's all I have, Clara said. She let her hands shake. If you take that, I'll have nothing. Then I suggest you take the settlement. Clara looked around the table, at the lawyers with their expensive suits and leather portfolios, at Derek Chen, still refusing to meet her eyes, at the recording device sitting in the center of the table, capturing every word. Can I ask one question? Clara said. Just one. Then I'll sign whatever you want. The lead lawyer nodded. Go ahead. When did you first know my husband was committing fraud? Derek Chen's coffee cup hit the table with a crack. The crack of Derek's coffee cup against the table was the loudest sound in the room. Coffee spread across the polished wood, seeping toward the stack of legal documents. The woman with the severe haircut grabbed them, lifting them out of the spreading puddle, while shooting Derek a look that could have stripped paint. I'm sorry, Derek stammered, reaching for napkins that weren't there. I'm sorry, It's fine, the lead lawyer said, his voice tight. He turned back to Clara and his smile had changed. Still professional, but thinner now, sharper. Mrs. Adler, I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Clara said. Her voice stayed soft, confused, the harmless grandmother asking harmless questions. I just want to know when the fraud was detected. Because if your systems caught it early, and it still continued for 6 years, she trailed off, let the sentence hang unfinished. Our fraud detection systems flag thousands of accounts daily. The second lawyer jumped in. Not every flag indicates actual fraud. Many are false positives. But 240 loans? All on Tuesdays? That seems like more than a false positive. The lawyers exchanged glances again. Clara could see the calculation happening behind their eyes, trying to figure out how much she actually knew versus how much she was guessing. Mrs. Adler, the woman with the severe haircut, said, Where is this going? Clara reached into her purse. Slowly, she pulled out a photocopy. Not the original, never bring the original, of the email chain. She'd blown up the font size, made it easier to read. The date stamp was clearly visible. February 2019. She slid it across the table. I found this in my husband's office, Clara said. I don't understand all of it, but it looks like someone at your bank knew about Martin's loans in 2019, and they didn't stop him. The lead lawyer picked up the paper. His face went blank, that particular kind of blank that meant someone was screaming internally, but had been trained not to show it. He passed it to the woman with the severe haircut, who read it and then looked directly at Derek Chen. Derek had gone pale. Actual, visible pale, like someone had drained the blood from his face with a syringe. Where did you get this? The lead lawyer asked. I told you, Martin's office. He kept a lot of papers. This is an internal email. You don't have authorization to... My husband had it, Clara interrupted. I didn't steal it from you. He had it, which means he knew you knew. Doesn't it? The silence that followed was the kind that happens right before something explodes. This conversation is over, the woman with the severe haircut said. She stood up, gathering papers. We need to consult with our client before proceeding. Wait, Clara said. I thought you wanted me to settle. The terms have changed, the lead lawyer said. He was still holding the photocopy, staring at it like it was a bomb. We'll need to review this document, verify its authenticity. It came from your servers, Clara said. Derek sent it. His name is right there at the top. Derek Chen made a sound like a wounded animal. Mr. Chen is no longer involved in this matter, the woman with the severe haircut said sharply. Derek, you need to leave. I didn't, Derek started, but she cut him off with a look. Now. Derek stood, knocking his chair backward, and practically ran from the room. The door clicked shut behind him with the finality of a coffin closing. Clara sat still, her hands folded in her lap. Inside, her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. But outside, she maintained the facade. Confused, overwhelmed, just a widow trying to understand what her husband had done. The lead lawyer set the photocopy down carefully, like it might bite him. Mrs. Adler, if you're suggesting that Apex Capital had prior knowledge of your husband's activities and failed to act, I'm not suggesting anything, Clara said. I'm telling you what I found. Martin kept that email for a reason. Maybe he was planning to use it, maybe he wanted insurance. She paused. Or maybe he just wanted proof that he wasn't the only one doing something wrong. The woman with the severe haircut's jaw clenched. Are you threatening us? No, Clara said, and then she smiled. Not the confused grandmother smile, the real one, the smile that came from knowing you'd just won. I'm offering you a choice. She reached into her purse again, pulled out a piece of paper. Blank. But they didn't know that. I have more, Clara said quietly. More emails. More documents. Martin was very thorough, and I'm willing to keep them private, to walk away and never speak about this again. She looked around the table. But not for my house, not for everything I have left. You want my silence? Fine, but you're going to pay for it. The blank paper sat on the table between them like a loaded gun. Clara watched the lawyers process what she'd just said. Pay for her silence. She'd crossed a line, moved from victim to something else entirely. Extortionist, maybe. Or just someone who'd finally learned how the game was actually played. The woman with the severe haircut spoke first. You're asking us to pay you to destroy evidence of a crime. I'm asking you to compensate me for the damage your negligence caused, Clara corrected. My husband stole money, yes, but your employee, she tapped the photocopy of Derek's email, saw it happening and chose not to stop it because it made his numbers look good. That's not security failure. That's complicity. You can't prove that. I don't have to prove it. I just have to show it to the SEC. Clara kept her voice calm, reasonable. Bank knowingly allows fraud to continue to boost quarterly metrics. That's a scandal. Stock price drops, investigations happen, people lose their jobs. Or, she gestured at the blank paper, we settle this quietly. You drop the foreclosure, forgive the debt, and pay me enough to live on. I destroy everything Martin left behind. The lead lawyer's face had gone through several colors in the last minute and landed on a kind of grayish purple. You're blackmailing us. I'm negotiating, Clara said. Martin stole $1.2 million. You let him. Fair's fair. Mrs. Adler, here's what I want. Clara had rehearsed this part, knew she couldn't hesitate, or they'd sense weakness. The debt is forgiven, the foreclosure is dropped, you pay me $500,000 as compensation for emotional distress and wrongful pursuit. And you sign a non-disclosure agreement that works both ways. I don't talk about what Martin did, and you don't talk about what Derek did. The second lawyer actually laughed. That's insane! We'll never agree to that. Then I'll see you in court, Clara said. And I'll bring copies of every document Martin left behind, all the emails, all the evidence of your system failures, everything. I'll testify that your bank's greed enabled my husband's fraud, and then I'll call the media. She stood up, gathering her purse. Wait, the woman with the severe haircut said. Sit down, Mrs. Adler. Clara sat. The lawyers huddled together, whispering. One of them left the room, probably to call someone higher up the food chain. Clara waited, her hands folded in her lap. her breathing steady even though her insides felt like a washing machine on spin cycle. She was bluffing, sort of. She had the one email, the smoking gun that proved Derek had seen the fraud and buried it. But more documents? That was fiction. Martin hadn't left anything else, just the laptop and the burner phone, and that single hollowed-out book. But they didn't know that. The lawyer came back 15 minutes later, his face carefully neutral. The huddle resumed, more intense this time. Clara watched them through the glass walls of the conference room, tiny figures gesturing and arguing while the city sprawled behind them, indifferent. Finally, they broke apart. "Here's our offer," the lead lawyer said. "We forgive the debt. We drop the foreclosure. But we're not paying you $500,000. That's admission of liability. "How much?" Clara asked. $150,000, structured as a settlement for mental anguish caused by our collection procedures. Not compensation for any alleged negligence, just acknowledging that our approach was aggressive given your husband's recent passing. Clara did the math. $150,000 plus the house plus Martin's life insurance. $150,000 of its own, plus her pension. She could live on that. Not comfortably, but she could live. "And the NDA?" she asked. "Mutual. You don't discuss the terms of settlement or any documents you may have found. We don't pursue any further action related to your husband's loans. Clean break. I wanted in writing that Derek Chen is no longer employed by Apex Capital." The lawyers exchanged glances. "We can't control internal personnel decisions." "Then no deal," Clara said. "He buried evidence of fraud to get his bonus. He doesn't get to keep his job while I lose everything." The woman with the severe haircut's mouth twisted into something that might have been respect. "We'll include a clause stating that all employees involved in the mishandling of your husband's accounts have been appropriately disciplined." "Fired," Clara said. "The clause says fired." A long pause, then, "Agreed." They drafted the settlement in an hour. Clara read every word twice, made them explain the sections she didn't understand, refused to sign until they changed the wording in 3 places. She wasn't the confused widow anymore, and they could see it. When she finally put pen to paper, her hand was steady. The lawyers witnessed her signature, countersigned their own, and the woman with the severe haircut handed Clara a check. $150,000, made out to Clara Adler. Real. "The documents?" the lead lawyer asked. Clara pulled the blank paper from her purse, the one they thought listed other evidence, and tore it in half, then in quarters, then into confetti. "Already done," she said. She left the building with the check in her purse and the real email still hidden in her underwear drawer at home. Insurance she'd never mentioned, and they'd never know about. Just in case. The check stayed in Clara's purse for 3 days before she deposited it, half convinced it would bounce or disappear or turn out to be some kind of elaborate prank. It didn't. The money appeared in her account, real and solid, and with it came something she hadn't expected. Silence. No calls from lawyers, no letters from the bank, no process servers showing up at her door. The foreclosure notice vanished from public records like it had never existed. Apex Capital had erased Martin's fraud from their books and moved on, and Clara was left alone in the house they'd almost taken. She spent the first week cleaning, not normal cleaning, excavation. She went through Martin's office with garbage bags and a recycling bin, throwing away years of accumulated paperwork, bank statements, tax returns, the hidden laptop with its Tuesday-only instructions. All of it went into the bags, then into the trash, then out to the curb for collection. The burner phone she kept. Don't know why. Maybe because tech support was the only person who'd told her the truth, even if he'd done it reluctantly. She tucked it back under the desk where Martin had hidden it, let it sit there like a gravestone. The hollowed-out copy of The Count of Monte Cristo went back on the shelf. The email inside, Derek's confession, her insurance policy, stayed exactly where it was, pressed between the carved-out pages. She'd promised to destroy all evidence, and she had. Everything except that one piece of paper. Call it insurance, call it leverage, call it proof that she wasn't crazy, that this had all actually happened. 2 weeks after the settlement, Jenna called. "I saw the foreclosure was dropped," she said. No preamble, no small talk. "What did you do?" "I negotiated," Clara said. "Aunt Clara? They paid me to go away. I went away. End of story." A long pause. Clara could hear Jenna breathing, processing. "Did you use the email?" "I showed it to them. That's all they needed to see." "Jesus," Jenna laughed, sharp and surprised. "You blackmailed a bank." "I settled a dispute," Clara corrected. "But yeah, basically." They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. Jenna's job, the weather in Seattle, whether Clara needed help with anything. When they hung up, Clara felt the weight of the secret settle more firmly into place. Jenna knew some of it, but not all. Nobody knew all of it except Clara and Martin, wherever the hell he was now. A month after the settlement, the mail brought a credit card offer addressed to Martin Cook Consulting. Clara stood at the mailbox holding it. This glossy piece of junk mail with Martin's fake company name printed in bold letters. "Pre-approved," the envelope said. "No credit check required. Just sign and return." She thought about Martin sitting at his desk on Tuesday mornings, watching the bank system update, submitting loan applications while the security was blind. Had he felt clever, guilty, or just bored? Filling the empty hours of retirement with a puzzle that happened to pay out in cash? The bank had let it happen because stopping it would have cost them more than ignoring it. Derek had buried the evidence because his bonus depended on good numbers. Martin had kept stealing because nobody stopped him. Round and round, everyone acting rationally within a broken system, and the system kept breaking because that's what systems do when nobody bothers to fix them. Clara tore the credit card offer in half, then in quarters, then into confetti, just like she'd done with the blank paper in the conference room. She let the pieces fall into the trash can at the curb. Back inside, she made coffee, sat at the kitchen table where she'd opened the foreclosure notice 5 weeks ago. The house was quiet, too quiet. It had been too quiet since Martin died, but now the silence felt different, not empty, just waiting. Clara pulled out her phone, her real phone, not the burner, and scrolled through her contacts. She found her sister's number, pressed call. "Hey," she said when her sister answered. "You still want to take that trip to Portland? The one we talked about before Martin got sick?" Her sister's surprise was audible. "You want to go? Now?" "Why not?" Clara looked around her kitchen, at the walls she'd almost lost, at the life she'd fought to keep. "I've got some money saved up, and I'm tired of sitting in this house, waiting for something else to go wrong." They made plans. 2 weeks in Portland, maybe 3. Hotels and restaurants and tourist traps, all the things Clara had avoided for years because Martin didn't like traveling and it was easier not to argue. When she hung up, Clara felt something shift. Not happiness exactly, but something close to it, something like possibility. She finished her coffee, rinsed the cup, and went outside to check the mail. Nothing but bills and junk. No foreclosure notices, no letters from dead husbands. Just an ordinary afternoon in an ordinary life that wasn't ordinary at all, if you knew where to look. If you've ever felt like the system was rigged and there was nothing you could do about it, you're not alone. Clara proved that sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing by their rules and start writing your own. Subscribe if you want more stories about people who refuse to stay silent when everyone expected them to disappear. We're just getting started, and the next one might hit even closer to home. Drop a comment if you've ever had to fight an institution that thought you were too small to matter. I read every single one, and your stories fuel what we cover. And the end.